77. Chapter 77 Endgame. Deep in the forbidden forest, Harry Potter smiled wryly as he began what was the most important battle of what he prayed would be the last Blood War. History would name him Chosen One, Champion and Savior, but history is very frequently wrong. Harry, and more importantly Noodle, understood that Harry Potter had a role in the key battle of the Blood War. He was a minion. That is an oval, not a circle. I really do not see how you passed arithmancy if you cannot even draw a circle. How did your goblin mother not strangle you in shame before she let you out of her ancient rune study, if this is the limit of your drawing ability? Oh, wait. Yes. Mouse Giver was there to guide and correct you. Noodle raged, then sighed and lay down like a limp, overcooked well noodle. Harry Potter muttered the earth pillar charm and rose into the air. Morgana's slippery left nipple. I would have sworn it was more even than that. Harry swore as he observed he had indeed made a magic oval, not a magic circle as instructed. The ritual team was 4 basilisk who were ever so excited to be the watchtowers in a parcel magic ritual led by Noodle. Noodle was leading the ritual as the single greatest expert in mind magic known to, well, anyone who wasn't Voldemort. Harry Potter was along because he had hands, and thus was qualified for the critically important tasks that involved digging, moving rocks, carving, and apparently filling in what he had just carved, because it was indeed more like an egg than an orb. Harry decided to do himself a favor and muttered the coloring charm and drew a line of Hufflepuff gold on the soil where his circle should have gone, then put a dot at each of the cardinal points where the basilisk who were supposed to stand as the watchtower guardians should coil. 5 sets of serpentine mouths opened and hissed not quite silent laughter as Harry Potter, the minion with hands, a wand, and thus digging ability, finally did it the way Hermione, Mouse Giver, always did. Harry had always indulged her, but thought it silly as it wasn't like he needed help to draw a circle on the ground. It turns out, drawing a circle you have to walk around when you can't see the whole thing at once is surprisingly difficult. There was less chance in Voldemort showing mercy than none of his basilisk offspring, and his beloved and loyal familiar Noodle, of selling him out and telling Mouse Giver he tried to ignore her advice and do it freehand, only to fail. So be it. Hufflepuff do the work. He had tried to take a shortcut, and now had to do it a second time, correctly. That lesson every witch or wizard had to relearn 100 times before they finally accepted and did it the hard way first. The circle was complete. The basilisk went to the cardinal points and began to hiss out their invocations. Harry went to the middle of the circle, placing his back to the pillar of earth he had made as his platform, and began to meditate. Noodle slithered over him, their skin contact enhancing the bond, as Harry and Noodle began to take down the barriers between them. When Harry had first bonded to Noodle, their bond formed through the parcel magic Voldemort's attack on Harry had unintentionally given him. Their bond formed without any attempt on Harry's part to dominate the mind of Noodle. In fact, Harry had opened his own mind to allow Noodle to find in Harry the tools needed to forge their bond. A bond of equals, not master and servant. A connection and communication, not a subordination. This use of parcel magic had never been seen before. Harry Potter became Speaker, the new master of parcel magic. Through the runes that bound his chosen family together, he and Noodle wove their clan and coven into that connection, into that communication. Thus, this new parcel magic wove itself into the blood of clan and coven, bound in rituals of goblin runic family magic and witch coven ritual magic. A new covenant was forged. Parcel magic had always been the deepest secret language of magic. The magic of the Pythian oracle, the magic of the healing Caedcus, the magic of death and necromancy. Parcel magic had always been the tool that allowed a control more profound, more complex than any other magical tool or system, which is what made Voldemort the single most powerful wizard in the world. But Harry and Noodle used it to weave instead a deeper connection. Harry opened his mind and soul as the basilisk on the cardinal points swayed in time to his slowing heartbeat. Noodle slipped off the bonds of his flesh, which he left bound around Harry Potter, as the sacred speaker and savior of magical Britain found himself reduced from minion to a snake version of the cat tree, with Noodle's flesh draped around him limply as his mind and soul soared deeper into the shared space of their bond. Break! Voldemort smiled as he let the Cruciatus curse run its course in the over-muscled Slytherin beater's body, watching as the clear and focused aggression of her earlier resistance wavered in the face of a pain so intense that no damage to the body could produce its equal without killing the victim. That was the true glory of the Cruciatus curse, not the pain it produced, but that pain could not be escaped by death or unconsciousness. It was a pain without limits, a pain that could not be resisted. It could break any will. Legiomens, Voldemort said, as Millicent's body relaxed from the painful arch it had locked in under the torture curse. His mind punched into hers like the venom of a cobra, driving deep and flowing in all directions like poison. His will was cold and clear, while hers was shattered by pain beyond the meager limits of flesh. Her mind was cold fog. The swirling ice of her mindscape clawed at him, but he was already past the high ice walls that should have kept him out. Now the finest legerdemain in wizarding history was inside her main defenses and into her mind. He sought out her memories of Harry Potter, knowing the most recent, no matter how much the occlumency may conceal and compartmentalize, will be not only close to her current awareness, but will be instinctively defended. His venom coursed through her mind like the distilled essence of a Dementor from whom he had adapted this magic. Despair, helplessness, fear. He drew upon her most painful and more damaging, her most shameful memories. This girl was a half-blood Slytherin. She had made herself lord by right of conquest by killing one of his own Death Eaters, but Voldemort knew what it was to be a half-blood among the blood purists of the House of Snakes. He, above all, knew the poison of ridicule and exclusion that would have been this too strong, too smart, unpretty, half-blood girl set among the pure-blooded delicate daughters of the noblest of wizarding families, and the petty cruelties of the overbred and overprivileged boys who courted them. He flooded her with the long-suppressed tide of them, letting the self-hatred and shame poison her will to resist, even as her last instinctive strength moved to defend the secrets her loyalty to her friends would have her die rather than yield to him. Instinct caused her to gather her last desperate strength to defend the secret she could not let him have, and thus betrayed its very location to him. Brave was a weakness. Even strength was a weakness when you faced the master of cunning, the true heir to Slytherin. The weeping and rejected young girl he passed, memory of, what an 8 or 9-year-old who understood she could never be anything but a half-blood, never be the delicate, pure-blooded princess required to be accepted, let him pass without resistance as he approached the inner fortress of her mind. The final defense loomed before him. Millicent Bulstrode in her Quidditch gear swung a bat and drove a bludger at him with bone-shattering force. This was her final truth, the core of her that could not and would not accept defeat. Voldemort raised a shield, but in this place spells were no more than symbols of the concepts, and Voldemort's faith in his ability to protect himself failed in the face of Millicent Bulstrode's soul, deep understanding of her ability to kick the crap out of anyone in her way. The bludger smashed his shield and hit him. Pain erupted in his soul, expressed in his flesh body as his collar bone shattered, expressed in his soul simply by an eruption of pain. In return, Voldemort lashed out with a Cruciatus curse that was nothing more than Voldemort's hatred of all life that was not him, and Voldemort hated stronger than any being in existence. Millicent screamed as she fell, and Voldemort kicked her as he stepped past her final defense and tore open the door to what he assumed was her childhood room, her safe space. Give to me the power I know not. Show me what Harry Potter commands, that I, Lord Voldemort himself, do not already know. Voldemort demanded, and with his wand, blasted open her last redoubt and stepped inside her room. Harry Potter sat cross-legged, his eyes closed, his hands on his knees as a rock viper slithered over him like he was some sort of furniture. The viper flowed off the Potter brat to rise before him. You have made a mistake, heir of Slytherin. You should not have come here. What I bear is not something your soul can withstand. Noodle hissed, almost bored. Voldemort drew himself up, raising his hand to show the memory of a ring Noodle had helped destroy, the memory of the Gaunt family ring, source of the very resurrection Stone Noodle had eaten. Voldemort flared his snake-like nostrils and spoke in Parseltongue with a degree of pompousness Noodle was glad speaker had never even attempted. I am the Dark Lord Voldemort, conqueror of wizarding Britain. I am the heir of Slytherin, greatest of the Hogwarts Four. All serpents that crawl the earth bow to my power and to the blood that I bear. You will give to me this power you bear. I command it. Voldemort hissed, and the power in his voice made Noodle sway. It was a terrifying power, the gift of Salazar Slytherin's blood. The Parcel magic of compulsion, the original covenant between the Parseltongue and magic itself. Noodle was glad that his mouth was not equipped with lips or cheeks, or it would have been impossible not to smile. This was one of those moments that you will return to in memory 1,000 times and still find funny. Without a word, Noodle opened his mouth and regurgitated the resurrection stone into his jaws. The black stone clasped between his fangs, he felt the flare of her fire flow out, and a stream of scarlet and gold, the colors of Gryffindor, flowed from the stone. Voldemort cast an arm over his eyes and cried out in shock at the light that seemed to burn as it touched his skin. When it faded, he drew his arm down, and Voldemort took a step back. She stood over a foot shorter than Voldemort, for in both their memories she was so. Her long red hair flowed to just past her shoulders, gathered in a no-nonsense muggle hair elastic. She wore blue jeans, sensible black flats, a slightly tattered blue sweater, and the smile upon her pale lips was a picture of cruelty that any cat or vampire would weep to see. Her green eyes blazed with the emerald green of the killing curse with which he had closed her eyes so long ago. "Hello, Tom. It's time to die." Lily Evans Potter smiled and walked towards Lord Voldemort, and Tom Marvolo Riddle felt fear sweep through him worse than the night he cast the killing curse at her son, and felt it rebound to destroy his own body. "You are dead. I killed you and your fool of a husband both," Voldemort said as he backed away from the woman who could not exist. Lily nodded. "You killed James. He has passed beyond, and I will never see him again." Voldemort snarled, snapping his wand out. "You will see him this night." Avada Kedavra, the killing curse sang from his wand and passed through her. She smiled sadly and closed the distance between them. "You cannot kill me. For the same reason I will never see James again. You took my life when you came for my son, but I gave my soul so that you would never have him. I offered my immortal soul to magic, if only I could stop you from killing him, and magic chose not to let me die. Magic let me live until I have devoured the last of your soul, that both of us be damned and doomed beyond death itself, never to be reborn, never to pass beyond. You will not leave even a corpse behind," Lily said, laughing as she pressed forward. Voldemort turned to run, but a bat struck him across the head, dropping him to his knees. Millicent Bulstrode grabbed his left arm and locked it extended. Lily Evans Potter stroked the spot on Voldemort's arm, where the dark mark branded his followers, and then she leaned down to kiss it. Voldemort felt his newly restored strength roaring out of him, his life being consumed by Lily Potter, who clung to his arm like a vampire. Her eyes wept tears of blood, and her fingers began to flake like those of an exhumed corpse as she seemed to fade with his own life. Noodle slithered beside Voldemort and whispered in his ear in Parseltongue, "Her death is bound to yours. She is dying as she is killing you. She has just enough life left to destroy you both. If only you had more life. If only you could reach out and steal the lives who are bound to you. Those fools who let you bind their souls to yours. Sure, they will die, but what are 100, 1,000 of their lives compared to yours? Are you not the heir of Slytherin?" Noodle hissed. Voldemort's strength was fading. Fear was ravaging his normally orderly mind. He must live. He had carved his soul into pieces to avoid death. There was no price he would not pay to survive. He reached out through his dark mark and drew upon the lives of every Death Eater bound to him, and as Lily Potter's mouth stretched wide like a hag's to devour his precious life force, he fed them into her hunger like Wormtail through his fellow Order of the Phoenix members to satisfy Voldemort when he came for him. All around Britain, and in 100 secret places worldwide, Death Eaters rose screaming as their dark marks flared, and their bodies began to wither as the life force was sucked from them, leaving dried and wizened corpses that looked like something pulled from a 1,000-year-old tomb. It was not enough. Lily held up one rotting hand and clenched it into a fist, only to open it smooth and healed. She smiled as she looked down at Voldemort one last time. "I'm sorry, Tom, but your death really will kill us both forever. I could not pass, while your followers remain to threaten my son. I had no power over them, you see. Only you did, so thank you for that," Lily said softly. Tom Marvolo Riddle screamed when she came to finish him. He did not beg for his life, but someone did. Harry Potter rose from his mediation, his spirit dragged here by his connection to Noodle. It was his hands that tried to pry Lily Potter's lips from Voldemort's arm as she was about to drain the last of his life. "Mom, no, you can't. If you do this, you will be gone forever. He is broken now. He is no threat. Mom, I can't lose you again." Harry Potter begged, unwilling to lose her, the mother who had given her very soul to protect him. Voldemort was weak, looking like an ancient three-quarter starved victim of a concentration camp, a pile of trembling bones and skin drawn tight with no muscle at all beneath them. His slit-pupilled eyes showed no hint of resistance or understanding. He was broken and nearly gone. Lily smiled softly. He had been broken before. He had been nearly gone before. He had returned to kill again and again. He had returned again and again for her son. She smiled sadly and wiped the tears from her own eyes. Turning to Noodle, she nodded, and Noodle's fangs latched on to Harry Potter's arm, and the paralytic venom, not the killing venom, filled his veins. Harry fell helpless. In this palace of the mind, intention was physical reality, and it was Noodle's intention that Harry be powerless to stop his mother's final sacrifice. "I love you, Harry. When you see James, tell him it was worth it," Lily said, then turned and drove her hand into Voldemort's chest. As Harry Potter faded from consciousness, his last sight was Lily Evans Potter eating the still beating heart of Lord Voldemort, as both of them dissolved into flakes of ash and smoke, leaving not even a shadow behind. Break. Millicent Bulstrode felt like she had been tortured, and someone ate a Dark Lord's still beating heart inside her skull, probably because they had. There was a 10 out of 10 chance she would be violating the legal drinking age if she lived to make it back to the Slytherin dorms. Neville and Hermione picked her up from the ground, which seemed to hurt her body a lot. It is possible she pulled her everything while being tortured. 0 out of 10, do not recommend. All plans on walking herself now abandoned in favor of being dragged while randomly twitching instead. Millicent had time to think about the prophecy for the first time. Millicent asked, "What do you figure the power he knows not is?" Neville shrugged. "The power of friendship," Hufflepuff's Cuddle Badger offered. Millicent snorted. "This is War, Longbottom, not an episode of My Little Pony." Neville looked confused, but Hermione, a Muggle-born, laughed at the reference. She offered a more practical alternative. "Ritual magic," Hermione offered. Neville objected. Voldemort's strengthening rituals and sacrificial rituals are literally what got ritual magic banned at Hogwarts. He knows ritual magic. "Chemistry," Neville offered. "I mean, we did a lot of war crimes with it there at the end." "Not really a wizard thing," Hermione objected. "Hogwarts never signed the Geneva Conventions or the Chemical Weapons Convention, neither did the Wizigamot or Gringotts, so use of chemical weapons does not constitute a war crime. Plus, Tom Riddle got straight A's in all the sciences in middle school before coming to Hogwarts, so he knew chemistry. He also got an O in potions on his newts. Very Slytherin, Hermione, I approve." Millicent cheered, then thought a bit before offering. "A clumency." Millicent offered. "It was kind of mind magic that trapped him." Hermione objected. "He was the master legerdemain in history. He knew mind magic." Noodle, who was slithering along beside them as they dragged Millicent back to where Harry was still collapsed and weeping, offered smugly. "Feminism. He went for one witch, assuming she was the weak link, and a second witch ate his soul." Hermione leaned down and bumped foreheads with Noodle. "This is why I love you best, Noodle, but there is no way that makes it into the history books. They will probably say it was Dumbledore's wand or some bullshit." Neville just about dropped Millicent, and Hermione stopped in alarm. Hermione looked concerned. "Neville, are you okay?" Neville shook his head slowly. "I was okay with the fall of the Ministry. I was ready for the death of Voldemort, but hearing Hermione Granger call a history textbook bullshit is just one shock too many." All three were laughing as they laid Millicent beside Harry, and Hermione made them a campfire. The war was over. The politics could wait until tomorrow. 78. Chapter 78, A New Dawn. Tea was a grim party that rode back in through the Hogwarts gates. Millicent Bulstrode caught the looks of the staff and students when she rode in the gates on the back of a unicorn, not her broom as the other students. But the herd lord had been slain in the battle with the giants. The herd lady, as with all unicorns, was more deeply connected with the song of magic than any wizard not deep in ritual, and felt Millicent's offering of suffering and the very real risk of death or insanity to get justice for her fallen lord. As such, the world must see that the unicorns of the Forbidden Forest held Millicent in the highest esteem. To be otherwise a witch or wizard who caused the death of a unicorn was to be shunned by all magicals. Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore stood with his best sorrowful grandfather smile on, his personal wand, always carried as a backup held in his hand, although from the sorrowfully paternal look on his face, the fact that the most powerful wizard in the world was holding a drawn weapon to greet the saviors of Hogwarts and magical Britain could not be a good thing. The Liar of Light is about to betray you again. Can I bite him now? Noodle asked reasonably. Dollar Stringy. Hissed one basilisk. Dollar stinks like fake lemon, hissed another. He said bite him, not eat him. Noodle knows it's 71 styles of curry mice. It would have been 72, but it turns out that when the Southern Cross is crossed by the moon, you shouldn't magically infuse fall. In my defense, you can't see the Southern Cross from England. Hermione argued in Noodle's defense. Think he holds a grudge about you knifing him, petrifying him, saving the world, stealing his thunder, and slaughtering a whole bunch of people without giving a speech about forgiveness first? Neville asked softly. Fangborn, the goblin, burst out laughing. Longbottom, I will have that translated into Gobbledegook and put on our headstones if Dumbledore kills us all. Even Griphook and Harry were chuckling as Neville Longbottom finally mastered the goblin version of gallows humor. Mr. Potter, I am very much afraid that I cannot allow you and your little friends to enter Hogwarts. This is a school, and I am responsible for the moral and magical education of the youth of Wizarding Britain. I cannot, in good conscience say, allow you to enter. Harry, I fear in your drive to eliminate one Dark Lord, you have become another one. Dumbledore's voice was mild, but his wand was rising. I am Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore, champion of the light, and headmaster of Hogwarts, and by my authority you are hereby expelled. Dumbledore spoke, and the very stones of Hogwarts rang with his voice. Harry slid off his broom, then turned to his friends and spoke softly. I think I have had enough of the twinkly-eyed git. I'm going to end this. Harry Potter strode forwards, and the wards of Hogwarts washed over him. He felt the welcoming magic flow over his skin, sing in his bones, flow through his veins, and pour through the gaping hole in his soul torn open when he had to watch his mother give her life a second, and far beyond final time. Harry felt the tears flow from his eyes as the welcome of Hogwarts flowed through him, rooting and anchoring him. He had come to Hogwarts as a recycled child, a child thrown away like garbage by this headmaster, and taken in by the goblins who became his family only because his mother really was the cleverest witch in her generation. In Hogwarts, he had found a place where outcasts like him could not only find welcome, but family. I'm sorry, dear boy. You cannot be allowed to taint another generation of impressionable young witches and wizards. The light can sometimes burn, but such sacrifices are required for the greater good. Dumbledore said softly and sadly. His voice washed over the protests from the assembled staff and students using his authority as headmaster to make the stones of the castle echo his voice. Then Harry Potter stepped forward, and the boy's mouth moved as if he was speaking, but it was the stones of the castle that sounded with his voice, a voice like thunder. Hard, cold, pitiless. No. Spoke Harry Potter, and the castle spoke with his voice. Dumbledore opened his mouth to speak, but against the thunder of Potter's voice, it was not heard, even by Dumbledore. The headmaster is given vast power and authority, Dumbledore, for the protection of his students. Before even the need to educate them, the founders of Hogwarts gave their magical power, their lore, their wealth, and the dedication of their entire lives to make a place where the magical youth of Britain would be safe from the endless wars that tore the land apart. The founders built terrible protections into Hogwarts and vested objects of unmatched power that their inheritors would have the ability to make sure their students would never be exposed to war and its horrors. It would be the headmaster, the heads of the founders' houses, and the teachers who stood between the students and war. You, headmaster, took all that power and authority and used it to bring danger to your school and your students. You were ready to feed me to Voldemort, to let his army reach these very walls, so you could play hero one more time. Any number of student deaths were acceptable, as long as those who lived would see you as their hero. Goblins and Hufflepuff share a saying, no thing unearned. You took the power and authority of headmaster and failed to protect its students. Dumbledore pointed his wand at Harry and shouted, Silencio. The silencing spell dripped from his wand like a spilled drink, and the stones drank it up. Waving wand desperately, he launched a half-dozen quick transfiguration spells and a cutting curse that should have bisected Harry where he stood. But the magic continued to flow from his wand like water from a hose, then like water from a shattered pipe, then like water from a shattered dam. Dumbledore tried to stop his casting, but his voice became too weak to speak. He fell to his knees, and as his hands hit the stones shone as the magic was drained from his body until he fell, bereft of any single scrap of the magic he betrayed. Harry Potter stepped over the headmaster's body. He ignored the old man's flinch. Harry sighed. Relax, Albus. You are a squib now. You have no more power to defend yourself from me than a first year still wet from the boat trip. You betrayed Hogwarts when your magic was bound to her. For a headmaster, you really were abysmally stupid. Harry bowed to Professor McGonagall. Headmistress, I beg leave to report that Voldemort and all his Death Eaters are dead. The giants are dead or fled our shores. The vampires and werewolves who had joined Voldemort are no more. Minerva McGonagall tried to process that sentence all in one go, but found it a bit much. She had been part of the ritual, but those raising and casting the power had only the vaguest impression of the battle, more of a symbolic representation. She remembered a lady of fire consuming a snake man, for the vision of that covered the whole sky. What do you mean dead? And what happened to the headmaster? McGonagall asked in alarm. Hermione patted the Gryffindor head and new headmistress on the shoulder. Dead as in we killed them all. Hogwarts happened to the former headmaster. Now he hasn't got magic enough to wipe his bum. Hope he remembers the Muggle way. Harry walked inside Hogwarts to see the students, the staff, the goblins, the hags, the normal witches and wizards from Hogsmeade, and from all over wizarding Britain who had come without any real hope of success, to lend their magic and their hope to the great ritual Hogwarts had raised against Voldemort. Looking at the goblins, he sneered and gave a slight upward jerk of the head, which is how a goblin warrior acknowledges another goblin warrior who has shared a bloody field with them. Looking at the teachers and students who had trusted to Harry and his friends, and dared to risk their lives and magic in a ritual whose power could easily have burned them all out like so many candle wicks, and he smiled broadly and nodded. Turning to the common people of the villages and towns who came, putting themselves in the last place Voldemort and his victorious army had to attack, just to add their magic to a ritual none of them understood, at the request of children who were not even legally wizards yet. He bowed to them deeply. Turning to the hags, the tall, long-clawed, hook-nosed, fang-mouthed magical demi-humans that haunted the slums of wizarding towns, and the swamps that were all that was left of the deep wild places that had once been theirs, Harry matched their predatory gaze with his own. "Why did you come?" Harry asked. The chief hag looked down her long nose and sneered in the bitter expectation of one who had been persecuted and lied to by authority for so long that she could perceive no other option. You called for all of those who wished to be free to fight for it. You took up the old ways, and in memories of covenants not only broken, but forgotten by your kind, we came. The hag said, her eyes hard, her smile the fang-bearing threat of a predator. Harry Potter, the goblin boy, bared his own fangs in return. The weak beg and starve. The strong hunt and feast. Harry said, and watched the hags behind their leader all snap their heads up to look at him. Harry showed no reaction, but inside decided Hermione was owed a spa day or something for digging out that hag proverb from a book improperly filed in the Hogwarts library, but upon being discovered by Hermione Granger, got read anyway. Harry looked the chief hag in the eyes and raised his voice. You joined us in the hunt. You will join us at the feast. Turning to the entire courtyard, Harry Potter raised his voice and spoke to everyone. The war is done, but we have lost too many, suffered too much to accept the way things used to be. The way things used to be was wrong. Tomorrow, we ride to the Ministry in Wizigamot. Tomorrow, either we make a peace worth all those who fell, or we finish the war. Break. Rita Skeeter tied her improbably large file folder to Katie Addy, her deeply annoyed and overburdened owl. Darling, I spelled them weightless and reduced them as much as I could, but there are dozens of magical photos in there, and you know how you lose image compression if you shrink them before typeset. Rita argued. Hoot, hoot, her owl complained, going for her nose, and only Rita's sudden lunge forward took the beak on her horn-rimmed glasses. It's an exclusive, darling. Harry Potter and his friends killed the Dark Lord, the giants, the vampires, werewolves, turned Dumbledore into a squib, and is marching on the Ministry tomorrow with an army including goblins, hags, centaurs, and unicorns. If we don't make the early edition, we may as well not have an exclusive. Rita argued. Her owl rocked its head back in shock, shook itself, then narrowed its eyes before giving a defiant hoot, taking off more like an over duck than an elite postal owl, the argumentative, somewhat rebellious owl that had accompanied Rita Skeeter since Hogwarts showed that she too had printer's ink rather than blood running its veins as it tore towards the distant printing press, as if every second was a lost reader. Rita looked at her photographer and sighed. Oh, Phineas, we may well get killed tomorrow, but I guarantee we will not only have the front page, but they will have to do at least a double run to meet demand. Like the owl, Phineas had been with Rita Skeeter too long to be completely rational on the subject. He grinned and patted his robes to make sure he had enough film and flash bulbs. Break. Undersecretary Dolores Umbridge looked at the shriveled husk that had been Voldemort's minister for magic and winced. While it had been regrettable that so many colleges had died when the Dark Lord took power, and in the unrealistic resistance to his utterly necessary changes, for the first time Dolores had seen real progress made in putting the undesirables in their proper place. Now all of those who held power above her were gone. All those who had ever dared slight or resist her had been killed. While Dolores Umbridge had never sought absolute power, she was the one standing when all the champions of light, Dark Lords, and High Nobles had either died or run away. Undersecretary Dolores Umbridge was the highest legal authority in Wizarding Britain. In fact, so few senior officials remained, and not enough sitting lords to legally pass wind, let alone legislation, she could justify taking power as an emergency measure until she decided it was no longer an emergency. Yes. When Dolores Umbridge was done, Wizarding Britain would be a decent place. The undesirables would be firmly in their place and laboring for their betters rather than pretending they were the equals of the proper pureblood families. Those children were on their way to the ministry tomorrow, no doubt with some petition or plea. That is totally fine. All visitors had to surrender their wand to enter the Wizigamot chamber to speak. Let them speak. Then she would have them marched off to holding cells, where a few potions, or even an Imperius or two, would adjust their attitudes towards her necessary changes. Good people dare not fight the ministry. That is why the ministry has never worried about what the good people think of them. 79. Chapter 79, Unnecessarily Pink. On the day the wizarding world was to be set to right, Dolores Jane Umbridge wore pink. Others would wear pink as if it were only another color, but Dolores Umbridge wore pink with intent. A half-blood witch sorted into Slytherin, she knew from growing up with a muggle mother and squib brother that only magical blood made someone fully human. Muggles were just animals that were too stupid to know it, and Muggleborns were mistakes at best, and thieves at worst, because they had the magic that was the birthright of good and noble pure bloods who were increasingly infertile, or produced squibs everyone at least knew not to talk about. Sorting into Slytherin as a half-blood taught Dolores Umbridge about the power of pink. You could not ever be allowed to forget your blood's status in Slytherin, nor in the ministry she joined after Hogwarts. Purebloods were stronger than she was. They were privately tutored and had access to magics denied those of lower birth like herself. But that very privilege robbed them of Dolores Umbridge's greatest strength, her intent. Dolores Umbridge did not wake up during the First Blood War and choose violence. She woke up and chose pink. To dress in pink so purely and potently, to behave with the absolute perfection of pure-blooded manners, is to make yourself unassailable. To dress demurely in pink made it clear to all of those who were male that she was being properly submissive and acknowledging her place in the social order. To dress demurely in pink is to make it clear to those who were female that she was not seeking to steal their social position or marriage prospects. It made it clear that Dolores Jane Umbridge stood for traditional values, even as the cruelty wielded inside that perfect social mask made it clear that Dolores Umbridge was willing to get her soul dirty, even if her hands remained clean. Those of high status found her willing, oh so very willing, to do the unpleasant things needed to preserve the good order of their society. You didn't have to tell her to make properly filed permits from the wrong sorts of people your superiors tried hard to discourage, somehow get misfiled, or suffer inexplicable mix-ups. You did not need to tell her to make embarrassing evidence from generous and well-connected benefactors disappear. You simply had to express your displeasure at some violation of the proper order to her, and those same problems would magically solve themselves. Dolores was far too well-mannered to ever bring it up, and her superiors were too wise to mention it themselves. But those who were prone to problems of discretion made sure to keep Dolores with them as they rose. Today, there were no more superiors to coddle, no more weaklings who lacked the stomach to do what needs to be done. Lord Voldemort had showed the way. Violence was not a threat to proper order in society. It was the foundation. Manners, etiquettes, even law itself existed to make sure people could be kept from forcing the powerful to dispose of irritants themselves. For that, they had the ministry. Dolores Jane Umbridge had the ministry, and thanks to the irritants that were even now on their way to the ministry with some foolish notions of reform, Dolores Jane Umbridge was about to teach them the meaning of power. Her power. Dolores Jane Umbridge woke up today and chose pink. The children would submit or die. Perhaps at least one ought to die, purely to convince the rest of the saviors of magical Britain that right and wrong, good and evil, justice and crime were simply values assigned by ministry officials, as in when they chose, for the maintenance of a properly ordered society. By her, in fact. Dolores giggled, then covered her lips in embarrassment. She adjusted her hat and wondered what that odd rumbling was from outside. Surely simply relieving 4 children of their wands didn't require that much noise. Isn't this breaking the statute of secrecy? Neville asked, as a parade of centaurs, unicorns, goblins, hags, wizards, and serpents strolled past Westminster Station and the famous Scotland Yard. Hermione stroked Noodle's head as the two of them rode their unicorn down the center of Downing Street and corrected Neville. We aren't violating the statute of secrecy. We have unicorns with us. A unicorn can, and sometimes have, wandered through Buckingham Palace during a press conference just to poke a particularly odious official in the unmentionables or step on noble toes. Hermione frowned, usually breaking them. Millicent pointed to the press on brooms and the wizarding crowds gathering and following the odd mix of light, dark, and wild creatures that accompanied the Hogwarts Four as they wanting to call Harry, Hermione, Neville, and Millicent, and pointed out. We have at least as big a crowd as the fall of the ministry. You have to think that will put the ministry flunkies on edge. Harry grinned and fingered his beater bat. Good. I hate having to repeat threats. It makes me feel like a Muggle movie villain. Then there is the whole urge to explain my whole plan and devise some overly complicated way to destroy my enemy that I will leave the room before finishing. Millicent looked at Harry in alarm. We have a plan. Neville looked up in concern. Should I know it? Hermione shook her head. No plan. Harry said something about getting back to his roots. Millicent and Neville looked confused until Harry pulled out his beater bat and slapped it against his hand with a smack. What is the golden rule of beaters? Harry roared. If it didn't work, hit it harder. Neville and Millicent roared happily, clashing their own beaters' bats together. Hermione and Noodle shared a long, suffering look. The goblins grinned, the centaurs nodded as if they had heard wisdom from a great sage. The hags chuckled, and Hermione sighed and muttered softly to Noodle. Jocks, you can't really reason with them. 4 auras, well, one looked like a retired aura, 2 looked like recruits, and one had only 1 arm and a wide smile on his face, blocked their path at the ministry entrance. 20 wizards picked for their very impressive appearance backed the 4 like a wall of magical muscle. The old aura lifted up his head and sneered. Your wands, please. Only sitting lords and ministry officials are allowed their wands inside the ministry. Hermione Granger eyed the one-armed Aura and frowned. Aura Dawlish, I thought you retired. Are you here to disarm us too? Dawlish opened his robes to show a row of brushes rather than magical tools and weapons inside his Aura robe. Not a chance. I am here to get inspiration for the follow-up to my Lady of Flame series. Hermione smacked her head, Noodle laughed, and Neville offered a less than welcome opinion. Gran says his Lady of Flame series was really well received in the gallery. We bought one for Longbottom Manor. I tried telling Gran that you never used a sword, but she thinks your muggle pistol thing isn't grand enough for truly heroic art. Neville offered happily. The two-armed senior Aura tried desperately to regain command of the situation. Drawing his wand, he shouted, "Hand over your wands and dismiss your animals, or we will fire upon you." The senior Aura screamed, and the two junior Auras drew their wands in trembling hands. Hermione counter-proposed, "Or perhaps we could violence." Harry broke the senior Aura's arm, then opposing collarbone with two swift strikes of his beater bat. Millicent hung off the side of her unicorn and swung up at one of the junior Auras, catching him in the baby makers, making it decidedly unlikely he would get to indulge in that activity with any success, and utterly impossible that he would even contemplate spell casting for several hours. Neville wandlessly summoned a crystal ball that one of the ministry officials was using to record the attempted arrest, and gave it a fairly powerful line drive that took the last junior Aura in the solar plexus, leaving him to do a very good impression of a salmon on dry land. Aura Dawlish was pounding his shoulder with his remaining hand, shouting, "Bravo, bravo." He raised his fingers to his lips and made a kissing motion. I cannot wait to see how Hufflepuff gold and black, Slytherin green and silver, and the bright red of the huge amounts of blood you are about to shed contrasts with the abyss of pink that awaits you. Dawlish gushed, his artist's soul already nearly orgasmic. Harry winced. Abyss of pink, Neville shuddered. You don't think, Millicent winced. On behalf of Slytherin, I apologize. I mean, a few hundred Death Eaters can be overlooked, but one Umbridge is already too many. I call her. She is mine. Hermione insisted firmly. The Muggle-born witch had seen too many of the Muggle-born deal with Umbridge's presence when she had power during the early tournament. They rode their unicorns into the ministry office itself, right down to the chambers of the Wizigamot itself. The wards on the door barring entry fell when Millicent Bulstrode, Lady Selwyn by manifest right of conquest, raised her lord's ring. Hermione's unicorn nudged it open and pranced cheerfully into the half-empty chamber floor. Hermione noted the stands for viewers were packed to the point the banisters only held through the powerful enchantments woven into their stone. Dolores Umbridge was in conversation with Rufus Scrimgeour, the former Dada professor who was now standing beside Dolores Umbridge, apparently frustrating that worthy by refusing something she wanted. Dolores Umbridge saw Hermione Granger, the mudblood, ride a unicorn into the most sacred heart of wizarding Britain, the Wizigamot chamber, and she lost her cool. Sergeant-at-Arms, remove those animals, the mudblood, and the other ones. Dolores shrieked. Hermione swung down from her unicorn and taped her wand in her hand. I really dislike that word. I am already 3 times the witch you will ever be, and I have yet to sit my first owl exam, Hermione said, with a calm that should have terrified anyone with an understanding of her body count to this point. You dare threaten me with a wand in the middle of this sacred chamber? Dolores said, fumbling in her purse for her own wand. Hermione tossed her wand to Harry. Hold this. I have to clean up some trash. Look, see, she is threatening me. I am the acting minister of magic, and she is threatening me. Arrest her. Dolores Umbridge shouted, but no one in the chamber, looking at half a dozen hissing basilisk, drawn bows of a dozen centaurs, some fairly angry-looking unicorns, and the wizard who took out both Voldemort and Dumbledore, and decided to watch and see how Umbridge handled things on her own. Hermione raised her hands, showing them open. I have not threatened you. I have voluntarily given up my wand and stand here without weapons, Hermione said, turning slowly to show the whole of the chamber that she was not visibly armed. Dolores pointed her wand at Hermione and smiled like a poisonous pink predatory toad. So, you are surrendering yourself for judgment. Hermione looked startled. Oh no, I just wanted everyone to be clear I was unarmed when I said this. Lord Jane Umbridge, you gave up to Lord Voldemort and his Death Eaters, the parents or siblings of more than 20 of our Hogwarts students, for torture and execution. For that crime, I sentence you to death. Hermione leaned forward. This is the part where I threaten you. You have a wand. You are a witch. Understand, I am about to cross the floor and kill you so hard your bones will be part of the floor forever. I encourage you to resist. Dolores Umbridge blinked. What? Hermione rolled her eyes. I am Muggle-born witch. I'm going to kill you right now. It is going to hurt the entire time you are dying, and I am going to enjoy every second of it. Would you like to defend yourself, even a little bit first? Hermione paused. And pink is not your color. You look like something a poodle pooped. She concluded. Dolores Umbridge snapped. Her wand, wobbling in an excess of rage and mediocre skill, pointed at Hermione Granger, symbol of all she found wrong in wizarding Britain, and she struck. Avada Kedavra, Dolores screamed, and a jade beam of death struck Hermione Granger, who folded soundlessly to the floor. Dolores paused in shock. I killed her. The thought boggled her mind. She had watched it done, ordered it done, but this time she had done it herself. I killed her. I killed her. Dolores shouted, raising her wand to the sky, then looking at the shouting gallery before a light behind her caused her to turn. Hermione Granger's body burst into flames. From the ashes of those flames, a phoenix of pure fire, easily the size of a harpy eagle, rose from the corpse and struck Dolores Umbridge in the chest. The phoenix screamed, and Dolores Umbridge caught fire. Dolores screamed as she fell back, the phoenix riding her down. She screamed loud and long, so long that it was impossible to tell when she stopped screaming, and the bones and stones started to scream as the phoenix fire melted the skeleton of Dolores Umbridge into the stone of the Wizengamot floor. Harry Potter strode forward. His voice beat the air like thunder. Voldemort is dead. His Death Eaters are dead. Dumbledore's power is broken. The war is over and a new age begins. We are all magic's children. Witch and wizard, Veela and hag, goblin and centaur, dragon, basilisk and unicorn. All who took part in the conquest of the Voldemort shall have a seat in this chamber. Those families that fought, those that lost sons and daughters, their heirs will have a seat in this house. Those that raised wand, blade, or bow, those that stood in the circles, and opened their soul to magic so powerful it reshaped the earth and sky, they shall have a seat here. Harry raised his hands, and the bright Swalo rune, the goblin silver embossed sign of the killing curse that marked the beginning of Harry Potter's war, shone like the sun itself. The stone thrones of dozens of lords retracted into the floor as those who dared not fight lost their seats. New seats with their sigils rose. Some couches were clearly meant for centaurs to kneel upon, or for short goblin legs. Others bore the names of Muggle-born or low-born half and true bloods whose only claim to nobility is they gave their magic, and sometimes their lives, to throw down the dark. Turning to Rufus Scrimgeour, Harry Potter spoke at last. You asked me for my endorsement as Minister of Magic when Voldemort was rising, and I turned you down. I knew you could be the minister we needed, but you did not yet have a ministry worth defending. I give it to you now. See that you find a way to work with all of our magical kin. We were never meant to be more than first among equals. Harry Potter watched as Noodle went over to the burning phoenix and head buted it, causing a somewhat confused-looking Hermione Granger to reform from the flames and ash of the fading phoenix, and take up Noodle's long serpentine form almost reflexively and stroke his scales. Lord Parkinson, the seventh of his name in recent months, still a lord only because Pansy Parkinson took part in the circle, shook his fist at the new minister for magic and shouted, These vermin have murdered lords of the Wizengamot. They have slaughtered whole houses. They have spilled the most ancient blood of wizarding Britain. Is the ministry to do nothing about it? I want warrants issued for their arrest. I demand it. Lord Parkinson screamed. Most others were backing away from the fellow, in case whatever happened next was catching. Rufus Scrimgeour looked alarmed, then dug in his bag. Merlin's knobby wand. I almost forgot. Pulling out papers from his bag, he gave 2 to each of the Hogwarts 4. Here you go, a set for each of you. My last act of one job, first of the next. Bit of both, really. Hermione opened one scroll and blinked. This in a defense against the dark arts owl. Without standing, Hermione said in shock. one of the lords who had lost his seat, having sat out the war in comfort, and now being stripped of land and titles, both protested. You cannot give them a Dada owl for genocide of their political opponents. Rufus struck a pose that looked remarkably like an old Roman senator giving a speech in the Roman Republic, and intoned seriously. Indeed not, sir. The owl outstanding is for the genocide of Dementors. That is owl-level magical dark creature mastery, beyond all expectations. For the slaughter of Death Eaters and the Dark Lord, they got their newt. Rufus Scrimgeour, former Dada instructor and now Minister of Magic, noted. Neville rolled his second parchment open, showing it to the room. It was indeed a Dada newt, also outstanding. Millicent and Harry exchanged a high five, while Hermione hugged Noodle and seemed to be crying. The new lords being summoned by the Ministry Owls to take their seats, and proxies appointed for those underage to take their seats, and the new races arguing with the surviving Wizigamot members about how power in the new mixed race house would be shared, the Hogwarts Four and attached serpents slunk off to the Ministry flue for a less public ride home. Neville frowned as they walked to the fireplace flue. We beat the Dark Lord, the headmaster, the Ministry. What do we do now? Hermione got behind Neville and began pushing him to the flue. Study. Owls are coming up. We got outstanding on Dada, but do you know how many classes we missed in everything else? We have an outstanding in not only our owl, but the newt as well. Do you have any idea how much harder we are going to be graded on the rest of them? Millicent sighed, and Harry nudged her shoulder. Back to work, Bulstrode. Notes to note, potions to brew, exams to prep, and Gryffindors to drag into broom closets. Harry cheered. Millicent smirked, then looked at Harry. How about you and Hermione? Granger leaned over her shoulder and shouted back. Only if he gets all O's. The two beaters grinned at each other and sped up towards the flue and Hogwarts. The war was over, but exams remained. It was oddly reassuring. The end.